And now, I get to invite Matt Santos up to the mic.
What great night of great stories, of bad to the bone people, tough guys, tough girls. And now I'm just going to bring it to a screeching halt because I've never reached any of that. I wanted to. I think every little boy growing up wants to be a tough guy. It never happened. Closest that ever came to me was one night several years ago in the middle of the night when I came to the understanding and the realization that Yavapai County, Paulden specifically, is a great place to get rid of a dead body. Just saying that makes me feel kind of tough. That body's name was Charlie, and it wasn't a highway accident, wasn't a bar fight, wasn't some shady deal on the wrong side of the tracks that went bad. No, none of that. Actually, Charlie was one of my best, oldest, and dearest friends. He had been suffering for a while. He had some ailments. He'd lost sight in one eye, about 60% of his hearing in his ears, and he had a bad hip. But one thing that he did have was a thick, lustrous, shiny coat. Charles Finkelstein to be exact, was my dog. Now, we're all of an age in here that you remember when all you needed to get 10 LPs for a penny was a first and last name and an address. All of my pets had first and last names and great taste in music. But don't laugh. Charlie's dead. What's wrong with you people? So, let me give you a little background. We were living in Paulden at the time, and we had left to spend a couple of days out of town. And we reached out to what we thought was a responsible family member to take after Charlie because he was ill. He had spent most of his days and nights just sleeping on the couch, and he would go outside periodically to fertilize our tumbleweed farm that we were growing. And I'm not trying to point fingers or nothing, not trying to cast blame, but PETA did get an anonymous message with my sister's phone number on it. Anyway, that family member that was taking care of Charlie while we were gone decided to let him out and leave him out for several hours. And if you know anything about Paulden, kind of a desert, coyotes who prey on the weak and vulnerable, like Charlie. So we pulled up about 1 o'clock in the morning. My son at the time was about 3 years old, and I unbuckled him, let my wife take care of him while I went in the house to let Charlie out. And I opened the door, and there's no noise, no tail wagging, no nothing. It's too quiet. And then in comes walking my wife, holding our 3-year-old in her arms, and he's asking, Pop, where's Charlie? And well, you know, that's not a conversation I want to have at 1 a.m. on a Monday morning. So I tell my wife, take him in the room. She goes, what's wrong? I said, just take him in the room. I'm going to go find out. So I walk into the backyard, and I look out on the porch, and it was obviously something had happened out on the porch. Now, I don't want to get into any details, but if you remember that scene in Jaws, Robert Shaw's last scene, when he was laying on Spielberg could have filmed it on our porch. So I tell my wife, I said, put him to bed. I got some things to take care of. And at that point, I knew I'd be burying a body that night. So she did. She went to bed and put my son to bed. Now, Charlie, he was about 140 pounds. You remember that Johnny Cash song where he would build a car by taking a piece home from work every night? That's what Charlie was. He was a little bit of Lab, a little bit of Pit Bull, a little bit of Saint Bernard, a little bit of Great Dane. He was a little bit of every large breed dog ever. When he was younger, he'd stand up on his hind legs, put his front paws on my shoulder, and we'd look eye to eye. He was big. And I looked for him, and I found him under our porch. And I realized at 1:45 in the morning, I'd be burying a body in Paulden, Arizona. I was angry, I was tired, I was frustrated, but I go into the garage, I get our little camp lantern and a pick and a shovel, and I go out to the front yard, find a spot on the corner. We lived on a corner lot. And I start digging. And I'm digging. And I'm digging through that rocky Paulden soil. And about 90 minutes in, I'm about 1.5 feet deep. And I'm not happy. And I'm sweaty. I had taken off my shirt. I'm wearing what used to be a white undershirt. Now it's covered in dirt and mud, sweat. And I sit down on my 1.5 foot hole. And I look up. And I see headlights coming by. And I look, and it's a white SUV with brown writing on the side. And I remember one of our neighbors is the Yavapai County Sheriff. I don't know him well. I don't know him well enough other than to wave at him. And I just sit there and go, well, I got some explaining to do. And he slows down, and his dome light's on, and he slows down and just kind of waves and keeps going. I go, okay, he's gone. So I keep digging. Another hour or so goes by. I'm about 2 feet in. I say, okay, I'm going to go get Charlie. Now, he's under the porch. Now, the porch is about this deep. I'm about this deep. So I got to crawl under there in my used-to-be white T-shirt. And I'm, again, don't want to get too... I've got inside Charlie on the outside of me now. It's not pretty. I drag him out, and I put him in a tarp, 144 pounds, 40 pounds, and I roll him up in this tarp, and I throw him over my shoulder, fireman style. I feel like Joe Pesci in like every movie Joe Pesci's ever been in. And I take him into the front yard, and as I'm throwing him into the hole, I see my neighbor driving by again. And this time, he slows way down. And he hits me with that spotlight on the passenger side. And I throw him in the... And I wave. And he waves. And he keeps going. I guess he's going home for lunch. I don't know what he's doing. So now I'm putting dirt on, I'm finishing, I'm patting down. About a half hour later, I'm patting it down. And I look up, and here he comes again. I guess lunchtime's over. And now he slows way down, and he actually stops. And he hits me with the spotlight on the driver's side window. And then he rolls down his window. And he says, everything okay? Yep. And he rolls up his window and he drives away. Now I'm both relieved and frustrated, because what do you have to do in my neighborhood to get law enforcement's attention? So I finish up, hose myself off, go in the house, the sun's coming up. And about 3 months later, I'm at Safeway in Chino Valley. It's packed. And I'm putting my bananas and my bread and my milk on the rubber conveyor belt, and it's a line behind me. There's a 90-year-old woman next to me. And then behind hers, this mom, 20-something, holding a toddler, trying to keep him from grabbing Snicker bars off the rack. And behind her is a sheriff deputy in uniform, looks a lot like my neighbor. And I look at him, and he looks at me, and I'm trying to hurry up. I'm punching in my pin. I got it wrong. I had to do it again. I'm bagging my stuff. And I turn around to leave. It's noisy in Safeway. And I hear, "Excuse me, sir." And it's my neighbor. He goes, "Do you live on the corner of Catalina?" And now it got really quiet in Safeway. And I said, yep. And I grab my stuff and I start walking away, and I get to about the Starbucks counter and I hear, wait a minute! That was you out a few weeks back in the middle of the night digging a hole? Now everybody's quiet. The little baby stealing Snickers is looking at me. He's quiet. I said, yes, sir. He goes, what were you doing? I looked at him as tough as I could be. I said, that's been 2 months. I don't think you can legally ask me that question. And then I left Safeway as fast and as safely as I could. And that's how you get rid of a body in Paulden, Arizona.